My family lived off my grandmother's money while mocking me for working, until she bought a luxury car just for me. I never thought a car would be the thing that finally broke my family apart. But then again, I never thought my family would treat me like trash just because I wanted to work for a living. Funny how you can live with people your entire life and still not really know them until something forces everyone to show their true colors. Let me back up and give you the full picture. I'm 20 years old and I work as a marketing assistant at a mid-sized firm downtown. Not glamorous, I know. Not the kind of job that impresses anyone at parties or makes your family proud. But it's mine, and I earned it. I wake up at 5:30 every single morning, drag myself out of bed while it's still dark outside, and catch the 6:15 bus that takes 40 minutes to get me to the office through morning traffic. 40 minutes of standing room only, pressed against strangers who smell like coffee and desperation, watching the city slowly wake up through grimy bus windows. My family thinks I'm absolutely insane. My parents, my older sister, they all live off my grandmother's money. Have been for years. Actually, since I was in middle school. My grandmother, who's 75 years old, and built a legitimate business empire from absolutely nothing after my grandfather died decades ago, sends $3,000 every single month to cover the house expenses. Rent, utilities, groceries, internet, cable, everything. She pays for their entire existence. They don't work. They don't have to. They just exist, floating through life on her generosity like jellyfish drifting in an ocean they didn't have to swim through. And they mock me for not doing the same. My mom makes observations about how I'm wasting my youth climbing some corporate ladder that'll never appreciate me, how I'm missing out on life itself. My dad just shakes his head whenever he sees me getting ready for work, like I'm the biggest disappointment he's ever had the misfortune of raising. Sometimes he doesn't even say anything. The headshake is enough. That quiet, judgmental headshake that says more than words ever could. They call me stupid, stubborn, naive. They ask me repeatedly why I'm rejecting the easy life that's right there for the taking. But here's the thing they don't understand. The thing they've never understood. I want to be like my grandmother. Not the version of her they see. The wealthy woman who funds their lifestyle. I want to be like the version she was at my age. She didn't inherit wealth. She didn't marry into money and then coast on someone else's success. She built it. She started with absolutely nothing. Just ambition and determination, and a willingness to work harder than everyone around her. She created something that supports not just herself, but multiple generations of family members. That's what I want. Not to be a parasite living off someone else's hard work, watching my life slip away while I accomplish nothing. I want to build something of my own. The only person who actually gets it is my coworker. This woman named, well, I'll call her my friend now because that's what she is. She sits 2 desks over from me at work, and she's maybe 10 years older, divorced, supporting herself completely. She's the one who listens when I vent during lunch breaks about how my family treats me like I'm crazy for having ambition. She's the one who reminds me, over and over when I need to hear it, that what I'm doing is normal, that it's healthy, that wanting independence and building your own life isn't some character flaw or personality disorder. Some days, honestly, her support is the only thing that keeps me going through those bus rides and the family mockery and the exhaustion. Work itself isn't easy either. I'm not going to pretend it is. The projects are demanding, the deadlines are tight, and my boss expects near perfection on everything. He's not a bad guy, just exacting. He wants quality work, and he's not interested in excuses when something doesn't meet his standards. I've stayed late more times than I can count. Redoing presentations, reworking campaign proposals, fine-tuning market research reports until they're flawless. But I love it. I genuinely love it. Every day I'm there, I'm learning about market research, about consumer behavior, about how to craft campaigns that actually reach people instead of just taking up advertising space. I'm learning about analytics, about ROI, about how to prove that what you're doing actually works. Every day, I feel like I'm accumulating skills and knowledge that'll serve me when I eventually start my own business. Just like my grandmother did 50 years ago. My family doesn't see it that way. To them, I'm the fool who chose struggle over comfort, the weirdo who voluntarily gets up before dawn when she could be sleeping in until noon like my sister does, the failure who takes the bus with all the other working-class people when I could be, well, I didn't even know what they thought I should be doing instead. Just existing, I guess. Spending my days watching television, scrolling through social media, going to the mall, spending someone else's money on things I didn't need, living a life with no purpose, no direction, no meaning beyond consumption and comfort. The house was always tense because of this fundamental disconnect. My sister, who's 24 and should really have some kind of life plan by now, spent her days doing essentially nothing productive. She'd wake up around 11, make herself an elaborate breakfast that I never had time for, then spend hours getting ready for whatever plans she had. Usually those plans involved going out with her boyfriend. This guy named... Actually, he doesn't deserve a name. Let's just call him the boyfriend. He worked some vague job he never really explained in detail. Something with sales or distribution or something equally nebulous. And he looked at me like I was something stuck to the bottom of his shoe. I heard him say to my sister once, when they didn't know I was in the next room, "She's just an assistant. That's like the bottom of the corporate ladder. That's where people get stuck when they're not smart enough for real positions." My sister laughed when he said it. Not a polite chuckle, but a real laugh, like he'd said something genuinely hilarious. That memory stuck with me. Still does. The casual cruelty of it. The easy dismissal of everything I was working toward. The way they bonded over my supposed inadequacy. It hurt more than I admitted to myself at the time. I kept my head down through all of it. I saved what little money I could from my paycheck after helping with groceries. Because yeah, even though my grandmother sent $3,000 a month, I still contributed to household expenses. Another thing they mocked me for. "Why are you paying for food when grandma covers everything?" my sister would ask. "You're just making yourself look better than us." As if contributing to the household I lived in was some kind of moral grandstanding instead of basic responsibility. I had dreams of eventually moving out, getting my own place, being completely independent. It seemed impossibly far away, though. Rent in our city was astronomical. A studio apartment in a safe neighborhood cost at least $1,500 a month, and that was before utilities and food and transportation. On my assistant's salary of $35,000 a year, I was looking at years of saving before I could afford even a security deposit and first month's rent. But I was doing it. Slowly, painfully, I was putting money away. $50 here, $100 there, whatever I could spare after bills and groceries and the occasional work clothes purchase. My escape fund, I called it in my head. My ticket to freedom. Then my grandmother came to visit. She doesn't come often, maybe 3 or 4 times a year. She's busy running her various businesses, traveling for meetings, living the life she built for herself, a life of purpose and achievement and constant forward motion. But when she does visit, it's always unannounced. She learned a long time ago that if you tell people you're coming, they clean up and present a version of themselves that isn't real. She likes to see how people actually live, not the performance they put on for company. She arrived on a Tuesday morning in late September. I was already gone, of course, on my 6:15 bus headed downtown. I had no idea she was there. I went through my normal workday, 3 client meetings where I presented campaign proposals, 2 major revisions on projects that had been sent back for adjustments, 1 very long presentation to a difficult client who kept changing his mind about what he wanted halfway through every explanation. The kind of day that left you mentally exhausted even if you never moved from your desk. By the time I got back on the bus at 6 that evening, I was drained. The kind of tired that seeps into your bones, where even thinking about what to eat for dinner feels like too much effort. I walked through the front door around 7, and there she was. My grandmother, sitting in our living room like she owned it. Which, in a way, she did, since her money paid the rent. She was in one of her business outfits, perfectly tailored navy suit, her signature pearl necklace, looking like she'd just stepped out of a boardroom. My parents were on the couch looking uncomfortable, sitting stiffly with forced smiles. My sister was nowhere to be seen, probably hiding in her room, avoiding whatever tension she'd sensed. My grandmother looked up at me, and her expression was unreadable. "Where's your car?" she asked. No hello, no how are you doing, no comment on how tired I obviously looked. Just straight to the question. I blinked, confused, my exhausted brain taking a second to process. "I don't have a car. I take the bus. You know that, Grandma." Her eyes narrowed slightly, and I saw something shift in her expression. "Every day? To work and back?" "Yeah, it's 40 minutes each way." "Not too bad, really." I was trying to sound upbeat about it, positive, like it was no big deal. Like standing on crowded buses for hours each day was perfectly fine and not slowly crushing my spirit. But my grandmother wasn't buying it. She stood up slowly, her posture straight, commanding. "Show me your schedule. Your whole day. I want to understand exactly what your life looks like." So I did. I walked her through everything in detail. Waking up at 5:30 to an alarm I kept across the room so I'd have to physically get up to turn it off. Because if it was within reach, I'd hit snooze 6 times and be late. Showering quickly. 10 minutes max. because we only had one bathroom, and if I took too long, my sister would pound on the door complaining. Getting dressed in my limited work wardrobe. I owned maybe 5 outfits that were professional enough for the office, and I rotated through them every week, hoping no one noticed I was wearing the same navy pants every Monday and Thursday. Breakfast was usually a granola bar or banana grabbed on my way out the door, eaten while walking to the bus stop. No time for anything more elaborate. Catching the 6:15 bus, which was always packed. Standing room only, most mornings. I described what that was like, pressed against strangers, breathing recycled air, the smell of coffee and wet coats, and too many people in too small a space. Watching the minutes tick by as we hit every single red light between home and downtown, while knowing that every minute on this bus was a minute I could have been sleeping or preparing for my day. Arriving downtown by 7, walking the 3 blocks from the bus stop to the office building, getting to my desk just as the clock hit 7:05, working straight through until 5 or 6, depending on deadlines and client demands. Sometimes my friend would bring me coffee from the break room when she noticed I was flagging in the afternoon. Sometimes I'd skip lunch to finish projects, eating a sandwich from the vending machine at my desk while typing, then catching the evening bus home, which was even worse than the morning because everyone was exhausted and cranky and the buses were somehow even more packed. Getting home around 7, eating whatever was left in the kitchen, usually something my mom had made that I'd reheat, though sometimes I was too tired even for that, and just ate cereal standing at the counter. Then going to bed by 9 or 9:30 to get enough sleep to do it all over again. My grandmother listened to everything without interrupting. She asked a few clarifying questions. What time did I usually fall asleep? Did I have time to eat breakfast properly? Was I getting enough rest? When was the last time I'd had a full day off? How often did I see friends outside of work? The questions got more pointed, more concerned. I answered as honestly as I could. I fell asleep around 9:30 on good nights, 10 on bad nights when my mind wouldn't stop racing. I didn't really eat breakfast. No time. I got maybe 7 hours of sleep a night, less if there was a deadline. My last full day off was... I had to think about it. 3 weeks ago, maybe 4. I'd worked the previous 2 weekends on a major campaign. Friends outside of work? I didn't really have time for that. When I finished, my grandmother was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned to my parents, who were suddenly very interested in the television, and asked them a question that cut through the room like a knife. Why don't you help her get a car? Her voice was calm, but there was something dangerous underneath. You have my money coming in every month, $3,000 that I send specifically to support this household and make everyone's life comfortable. Why is she taking public transportation for 2 hours a day like someone with no resources when there's clearly money available to help her? My mom gave some excuse about teaching me responsibility, about how getting things handed to you doesn't build character, about how I needed to learn the value of working for what I want. The irony was apparently completely lost on her. She was saying this while living entirely off my grandmother's monthly checks, having not worked a single day in over a decade. My dad added something about me making my own choices, about how I'd chosen this path and needed to see it through, about how helping too much would undermine my independence. Again, the man was speaking while contributing nothing to the household income, while living in a home paid for by someone else's generosity. The cognitive dissonance was stunning. My sister didn't even look up from her phone. She was probably texting her boyfriend about something completely inconsequential, completely oblivious to the tension building in the room. My grandmother's expression got harder with every word. I could see her jaw tighten, see the way her hands gripped the armrest of her chair. She was angry, I realized. Genuinely, deeply angry. But she didn't explode. She was too controlled for that, too strategic. She just nodded slowly, like she was filing away information for later use. She didn't say anything else that night. Just told me she was proud of me, that she admired my work ethic and determination. She kissed my forehead, something she'd done since I was little, and went to the guest room. I thought that was the end of it. Just a visit, a little family drama, then back to normal. But I should have known better. My grandmother didn't build a business empire by letting things slide. She didn't become successful by accepting unacceptable situations. She was a problem solver, a strategist, and she'd just identified a problem that needed solving. 3 days later, I came home from work to find a car parked in front of our house. Not just any car, an imported luxury sports car. The kind of vehicle you see in magazines or driving past in the wealthy part of town. The kind that costs more than most people make in a year. Maybe 2 years. Maybe more than that. It was sleek, beautiful, and completely ridiculous. The paint was this deep metallic blue that seemed to shift colors depending on how the light hit it. The interior visible through the windows looked like something from a spaceship, all leather and technology and expensive materials. My grandmother was standing next to it, holding a set of keys. She was dressed in one of her business suits, looking calm and satisfied. My family was on the porch, and their faces were priceless. My sister looked like she'd been physically slapped. Her mouth was hanging open, her phone forgotten in her hand. My parents looked shocked, and if I'm being completely honest, angry. Not happy for me, angry. Like something had been taken from them. "This is for you," my grandmother said, pressing the keys into my hand. The keys were heavy, substantial, with the car's logo embossed on them. For waking up every morning at 5:30 and choosing to build your own life instead of coasting on someone else's success. For having the same spirit I had at your age. The same determination to create something rather than just consume. For not being like them. She still didn't glance at my family when she said that last part. She didn't need to. We all knew exactly who she meant. The contrast was stark, undeniable. Me, working myself to exhaustion to build a future. Them, sitting at home spending money they didn't earn, mocking the person who actually tried. I couldn't speak. My throat felt tight, my eyes burning with tears I was trying not to shed. I just stared at the keys, then at the car, then back at the keys. This wasn't real. This couldn't be happening. Cars like this didn't happen to people like me. People like me took the bus. People like me saved for months to afford a used sedan with 200,000 miles on it. People like me didn't get imported luxury sports cars as rewards for going to work. You're reducing your commute from 40 minutes to 15, my grandmother continued, her voice matter of fact, like she was discussing a simple business decision instead of changing my entire life. You need your energy for work? Not for sitting on a crowded bus with strangers breathing on you. You've earned this. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for accepting what you deserve. She left the next morning, early, before most of the house was awake. I got up to say goodbye and she hugged me tightly. "Stand your ground," she whispered in my ear. "They're going to try to take this from you. Don't let them." At the time, I thought she was being paranoid, overly cautious. My family wouldn't actually try to take my car. That would be crazy. That would be theft. That would be so obviously wrong that even they wouldn't attempt it. I was so naive. The tension in the house after she drove away was thick enough to cut with a knife. I could feel my sister's eyes burning into me every time I walked past her. My parents kept having these whispered conversations that stopped abruptly whenever I entered a room. At dinner that night, nobody spoke directly to me. They'd talk around me, through me, but never to me. It was like I'd become invisible, or worse, like I'd become the enemy. But I had the car. And oh my God, the difference it made was life-changing. That first morning, I woke up at 6:30 instead of 5:30. A full extra hour of sleep. I felt almost human when I got up, instead of like a zombie going through the motions. I drove to work in 15 minutes, arriving refreshed instead of exhausted and already defeated by the day. The car handled like a dream. Smooth, responsive, powerful. I had time to grab a real coffee before starting my day. Time to review my notes before meetings. Time to just breathe and prepare mentally instead of rushing in frazzled and behind. My boss even commented on it. He called me into his office the second week I had the car, and I thought I was in trouble for something. But he just wanted to tell me that my work had noticeably improved. The campaigns I was developing were sharper, more creative. My presentations were more polished. Whatever I was doing differently, he said, I should keep doing it. I felt valued in that moment. Valued by my grandmother who'd recognized my efforts. Valued by my work where my contributions actually mattered. For about a week, things were tense at home but quiet. My sister made little comments here and there about how the car was too much for someone like me. My parents made pointed remarks about humility, about not getting a big head. But I had the car. I had my independence, at least in that one crucial way. Then came the real pressure. My mom sat me down one evening after dinner. She had this concerned expression on her face that I could see right through. "Honey," she started, "your sister has some really important job interviews coming up. Major companies. And we were thinking, wouldn't it be nice if she could arrive in a professional vehicle? Just for a few weeks, just until she gets settled." "No," I said. The word came out firmer than I expected. "The car is mine. Grandma gave it to me for my commute. I need it for work." My mom's face changed. The fake concern dropped away. "After everything we've done for you, you can't do this one small thing for your sister? After we've housed you, fed you, supported you all these years?" The next day, my dad cornered me in the kitchen. I raised you better than this, he said, shaking his head. Family helps family. This selfishness? I don't recognize this person you're becoming. Again, I said no. Again, I stood firm. Then my sister started crying, real tears streaming down her face. I'll never succeed if I can't make a good impression, she sobbed. My life is going nowhere. You're my only hope and you're being so selfish. Couldn't you just take the bus for a few weeks? You've done it before. The pressure came from every direction. At breakfast, at dinner, in passing in the hallways. It was psychological warfare, and they were experts at it after years of practice. The turning point came about 10 days into their campaign. My dad sat me down, and his voice was cold. If you can't do this simple thing for family, if you can't put your sister's needs above your own for just a few weeks, then maybe you shouldn't be living in the family house. Maybe you should find your own place if you want to act like you're not part of the family anymore. That was it. The threat that made everything fall apart. I had maybe $2,000 saved, not even enough for a security deposit and first month's rent in this city. The threat of being homeless, of losing everything I'd been working toward, was too much. I broke. I handed over the keys. My sister started driving the car everywhere, and I mean everywhere. To the mall, to restaurants, to her boyfriend's place, to parties on the weekends. Her boyfriend, the one who'd always looked at me with such disdain, the one who'd called me just an assistant, like it was an insult, was suddenly at our house constantly. He'd ask to borrow the car for errands. He'd show up and take my sister out in it, barely glancing in my direction. The worst part was seeing it being misused. One night, I heard them come home at 2 a.m, music blaring, laughing loudly enough to wake the neighbors. The next morning, I found fast food wrappers in the back seat, an empty bottle rolling around the floor, and a scratch on the driver's side door that definitely wasn't there before. When I confronted my sister about it, she just shrugged. It's a car. Cars get scratches. Don't be so uptight. I went back to the buses. Back to waking up at 5:30, while my sister slept in until noon. Back to the 40-minute commutes pressed against strangers. The first morning back was brutal. It was raining and the bus was packed beyond capacity. I had to stand the entire way, my arm aching from holding the overhead rail, my clothes getting progressively damper from people brushing against me with their wet coats. I arrived at work exhausted and already defeated, and it was only 7 a.m. My coworker noticed immediately. "What happened to your car?" she asked, when she saw me at the bus stop near our office that evening. When I told her the whole story, the gift, the pressure, the threats, the capitulation, she was furious on my behalf. "That's not borrowing," she said flatly. "That's theft with extra steps. You know that, right?" I knew. Of course I knew. But what could I do? I was trapped. She offered to give me rides when she could, and some mornings she did, picking me up at a coffee shop halfway between our places. Those rides were lifesavers. We'd talk about work, about life, about how families can be toxic even when they're supposed to love you. She never judged me for giving in. She just supported me, kept me sane, reminded me that I wasn't crazy for being angry about this situation. But mostly, I was back to square one, except now I knew exactly what I was missing. I'd taste freedom for those few weeks with the car, arriving at work refreshed, having energy in the evenings, feeling like an actual adult with my own life. Now it was gone, and every day felt like a punishment for daring to want something better. This went on for 2 months. 2 full months of October and November. I watched my sister treat that car like a personal toy. She'd post photos on social media from inside it, filtered selfies with captions like, "Living my best life," and "blessed." Her friends would comment asking if it was hers, and she'd respond with winking emojis, never correcting them, letting them think she'd somehow earned or purchased this luxury vehicle. She never went to a single job interview. The first week, she said the timing wasn't right. The second week, she claimed the companies wanted to interview after the holidays. The third week, she wasn't sure these positions were the right fit. By the fourth week, she'd stopped making excuses altogether. The car was just hers now in her mind. My property had become communal family property, and then somehow just her property. I asked her once in early November, when she was planning to start those interviews she'd needed the car for. She looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "I'm exploring my options," she said vaguely. "The job market is really competitive right now. I need to wait for the right opportunity." The right opportunity. She'd say that while lounging on the couch in pajamas at 2 p.m, scrolling through social media, having contributed absolutely nothing to society that day or any day in recent memory. But I wasn't idle during those 2 months. The anger became fuel. I picked up every extra project at work my boss would give me. When he asked if I wanted to help with a campaign that would require late nights and weekend work, I said yes immediately. The extra hours meant extra pay, and extra pay meant getting closer to freedom. I volunteered for everything. The boring data entry projects no one else wanted, the client presentations that required extensive preparation, the market research that meant conducting surveys and compiling results for hours. My boss noticed. He called me into his office one Friday afternoon in late November. "You've been putting in a lot of extra time," he said, looking at me with a mixture of concern and approval. "Everything okay?" "Everything's fine," I lied. "I just really want to learn as much as I can." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Well, your work has been exceptional. I'm giving you a raise. It's not huge, an extra $2,000 a year, but it's what I can approve without going through the whole corporate chain. You've earned it. $2,000 more a year." It wasn't life-changing, but it was something. Every bit helped my escape fund. I thanked him profusely, and when I got back to my desk, I immediately updated my savings spreadsheet. I was getting closer. Slowly, painfully slowly, but closer. I sent out resumes constantly. Every lunch break, I'd pull up job sites on my phone and apply for anything that paid more than what I was making. Marketing coordinator positions, junior account manager roles, assistant director openings. Most required more experience than I had, but I applied anyway. I got a few interviews. My friend helped me prepare, doing practice runs in empty conference rooms during our breaks. "Tell me about a time you overcame a challenge," she'd ask. And I'd give carefully crafted answers that didn't mention my dysfunctional family or the stolen car or the constant manipulation I was living under. I didn't get most of those jobs. I'd make it to second interviews and then get rejection emails thanking me for my time. It stung every time, but I kept applying. The math was simple. If I applied to enough positions, eventually one would say yes. I researched apartments obsessively. I created spreadsheets with every available rental in my price range. Studio apartments in questionable neighborhoods where the reviews mentioned occasional break-ins. One-bedrooms in buildings without elevators where I'd have to walk up 5 floors. Basement units with tiny windows and a vague smell of mildew. None of them were ideal, but any of them would be freedom. I calculated everything. First month's rent, last month's rent, security deposit, utility hookup fees, renter's insurance, basic furniture from thrift stores. I made a minimum list of what I'd need: a bed, a table, a chair, dishes, towels. I visited furniture stores and made notes of the cheapest acceptable options. A mattress on the floor was fine. A folding table was fine. Mismatched plates and cups were fine. I didn't need nice things, I just needed out. My escape fund grew at an agonizing pace. $300 from one paycheck, $500 from another when I'd worked overtime, then $475, then $350. It felt like trying to fill an ocean with a teaspoon. By the end of November, I had just over $3,000 saved. Still not quite enough for a decent security deposit and first month's rent plus the other expenses, but getting closer. December came around, bringing cold weather and the annual family tradition I'd honestly forgotten about in all the chaos. Every year, my grandmother hosts Christmas at her house. My parents left 2 days before Christmas to help with preparations. My sister went with them, obviously driving my car. Her boyfriend tagged along too. I couldn't go early, I had to work. So I told my family I'd meet them there on Christmas Day. Christmas morning arrived cold and gray. I woke up early despite it being a holiday because I had a long journey ahead. The apartment was freezing. The heat hadn't kicked in yet, and I could see my breath in the air as I got dressed. The bus to the main station was nearly empty. Just me and a few other people who had to work or travel on Christmas. The city looked different in the early morning holiday silence. Shops were closed, streets were empty, everything felt suspended in time. At the station, I waited 30 minutes for the connecting bus, stamping my feet against the cold concrete floor to keep warm. The waiting area smelled like stale coffee and industrial cleaner. A few families were there, traveling to relatives, their kids excited about presents waiting at Grandma's house. I sat on a metal bench that felt like ice even through my coat, my small overnight bag at my feet, and watched them. They looked happy, normal, like families were supposed to look. The bus ride out to my grandmother's neighborhood took over 2 hours. We drove through the city, then the suburbs, then into the wealthier areas where the houses got bigger and the lots got wider. I watched it all pass through the window, thinking about how this commute would have been 15 minutes if I'd had my car. 15 minutes instead of 2 hours plus the walk from the bus stop. When I finally reached my grandmother's street, I walked the last 3 blocks carrying my bag. The neighborhood was beautiful. Old trees, perfectly maintained lawns, houses that looked like they belonged in magazines. Christmas decorations everywhere, the kind that professional companies install. It was a different world from where my family lived, from where I worked, from anywhere I'd ever belonged. I walked up my grandmother's long driveway, my feet aching from the walk, my shoulders tired from carrying the bag. But then I saw her house, and despite everything, I smiled. She decorated extensively. Lights wrapped around every tree and shrub. Wreaths on every window. Garlands along the fence. Smoke was coming from the chimney. Through the windows, I could see the glow of what was probably a fire in the enormous stone fireplace. It looked warm, inviting, perfect. That's when I saw her. My grandmother was in the front garden wearing her gardening gloves and watering her winter plants despite it being Christmas morning. She always said plants didn't take holidays. She was dressed casually, not yet in her formal Christmas outfit, which meant she was doing her morning routine before the festivities began. She looked up as I approached on foot, and I saw her expression shift from pleasant to confused in an instant. I walked up the long driveway to my grandmother's house, tired from the journey but happy to be there. The house was beautiful, decorated with lights and wreaths, smoke coming from the chimney. It looked like something from a holiday movie. I smiled despite my exhaustion. At least I'd get to see my grandmother, to thank her again for the car, even if I couldn't currently use it. That's when I saw her. My grandmother was in the front garden, watering her plants despite it being Christmas morning. She always said plants didn't take holidays. She looked up as I approached, and her expression went from pleasant to confused in about 2 seconds. "Where's your car?" she asked, just like she had that first time. But now there was an edge to her voice. Now there was suspicion. "I took the bus," I said, suddenly nervous. I hadn't planned for this conversation, hadn't thought about how I'd explain this to her. Her eyes narrowed. "Why?" I didn't get a chance to answer. My parents appeared on the porch, their faces going pale when they saw me standing there with my grandmother. They'd clearly heard the question. They knew exactly where this was going. "Where's the car I bought for her?" My grandmother's voice was steady, but there was steel underneath. She wasn't asking me anymore. She was demanding an answer from anyone who'd give it. My dad tried first. "Well, you see, we thought, the thing is, the car," my grandmother interrupted. "The expensive sports car I specifically purchased for my granddaughter, who works hard every single day. The car I gave to her and only her." "Where is it?" My mom jumped in. "We let her sister borrow it. Just temporarily, for job interviews. We thought—" "You thought?" My grandmother's voice went up. Not quite a shout, but close. "You thought you could take something I gave to her and just redistribute it? You thought you had that right?" The temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees. My grandmother pulled off her gardening hat and threw it on the ground. I'd never seen her do that before. She was always so composed, so controlled. But right now, she looked furious in a way that was honestly terrifying. That's when we heard it. The car. My car. Coming up the driveway with the music absolutely blaring. My sister was in the passenger seat, her boyfriend behind the wheel, both of them laughing about something. They were completely oblivious to the bomb they were about to walk into. The boyfriend parked aggressively, revving the engine like he was showing off. My grandmother's face went from angry to absolutely livid. She marched toward the car before my sister could even fully open the door. "Get out," she said. Not loudly, but with such command that my sister immediately obeyed. "Get out of that car right now." My sister stumbled out, suddenly aware that something was very wrong. The boyfriend stayed in the driver's seat, apparently confused about whether he should move or not. My grandmother yanked open the driver's door and told him to get out too. He did, though he looked annoyed about it. She took the keys from his hand, walked over to me, and placed them in mine. "This is yours. It has always been yours. It will only ever be yours." Then she turned to my parents. "You're done. All of you. I've supported you for years, sent you $3,000 every month so you could live comfortably while contributing nothing to society. And this is how you repay that generosity? By stealing from the one person in this family who actually works for a living? By manipulating her into giving up something I specifically gave to her?" My dad tried to speak. "Please, if you just—" "No." My grandmother cut him off. "I'm finished. The money stops today. Not next month. Today. You can figure out your own rent, your own bills, your own lives. I'm done enabling parasites." My mom started crying. "We can't afford the rent. We'll be evicted. Please, you can't just—" "I absolutely can, and I am." My grandmother's voice was ice. You should have thought about that before you taught your daughters that manipulation and theft are acceptable behaviors. My sister, who'd been silent this whole time, finally found her voice. This is insane. It's just a car. She can share. Family shares. The boyfriend, who really should have stayed quiet, decided to add his opinion. Yeah, this is ridiculous. Over a car? Really? My grandmother turned to him. Who are you? I'm her boyfriend. We've been together for... I don't care. Get off my property. He blinked. What? You heard me. Leave. Now. He looked at my sister like she was going to defend him, but she just stood there, shell-shocked. Then he looked at the car, my car, and his expression changed. He wasn't looking at my sister anymore. He was looking at the money he thought came with her, the lifestyle he thought he'd be part of, and now that was gone. You know what? He said to my sister. This family is insane. I'm done. He turned and started walking down the driveway. Just like that. Didn't even say goodbye. Didn't look back. My sister called after him once, but he didn't stop. She stood there watching him leave, her face crumpling as she realized he'd never cared about her. Just what she represented. Just the money. My grandmother didn't watch him go. She was already back to addressing my parents. You have until January 1st to figure out your living situation. I've already called my lawyer. The money transfers are being stopped. You're also no longer welcome at family gatherings. Any of them. You don't deserve to be here. She called over one of her staff members and told him to call a taxi. My parents stood there in shock. My sister was still staring down the driveway where her boyfriend had disappeared. None of them could quite process what was happening. The idea that there might be consequences for their actions seemed completely foreign to them. The taxi arrived faster than anyone expected. My grandmother personally escorted my family to it, making sure they actually left. They went quietly, too shocked to argue anymore. I watched the taxi drive away with my parents and sister inside, and I felt like I was living in some alternate reality. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. My grandmother turned to me. Her expression softened. Come inside. We need to talk. We sat in her study and she poured us both tea. Her hands were completely steady, like she hadn't just demolished my entire family structure 5 minutes ago. I have a proposition for you, she said. I own an apartment building downtown. There's a unit available, 2 bedrooms, good location. I want you to have it. I opened my mouth, but she held up her hand. I'm not done. You're wasting your talents at that marketing company. I have a business that needs someone with fresh ideas and actual work ethic. I want you to come work as a senior administrator for one of my primary companies. You'll oversee major projects, manage teams, learn how everything operates. The salary is $350,000 a year. I nearly choked on my tea. $350,000. That was 10 times what I was making now. Exactly 10 times. You've earned this, she said firmly. You reminded me of myself at your age, and I was right about you. When you're ready, and I think you will be ready sooner than you think, you can start your own ventures with my backing. Deal? I couldn't speak. I literally couldn't form words. This was everything I'd wanted, everything I'd dreamed of. But it wasn't charity. I'd earned this through years of work while my family mocked me, through 2 months of buses while they stole from me. This was recognition. Why? I finally managed to ask. Because you have potential they were actively trying to crush. Because you deserve better than what they gave you. She sipped her tea. Also because I'm old and tired of watching people waste the opportunities I provide. I want to invest in someone who will actually use them. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind. My grandmother arranged everything. Movers for my belongings, transfer paperwork for the job, setting up the apartment. She handled it all with the efficiency of someone who'd built an empire. The moving day itself was surreal. I went back to my family's house one last time with the movers my grandmother hired. My parents weren't there. I'd timed it deliberately for when I knew they'd be out. But my sister was, sitting on the couch in her pajamas at 11 in the morning, watching me pack up my entire life into boxes. She didn't offer to help. She didn't say anything at all, actually. Just watched with this expression I couldn't quite read. Resentment, or regret, or maybe just confusion that there were actual consequences to her actions. I didn't have much to pack. Clothes, books, my laptop, some personal items. Most of the furniture in my room had come with the house. I left it all, took only what was truly. The movers were done in under 2 hours. As I walked out carrying the last box, my sister finally spoke. Was it worth it? She asked. Destroying the family over a car? I stopped in the doorway, turned to look at her. I didn't destroy anything, I said quietly. You did. When you took something that wasn't yours and showed no remorse. When you lied about job interviews that never existed. When you let your boyfriend treat my property like his personal toy. I didn't destroy this family. You all did that yourselves. She didn't respond, just turned back to the television. I left and didn't look back. The apartment was incredible. 2 bedrooms, which meant I had space for an actual office. Somewhere to work on projects, to learn, to plan my future. The kitchen was modern with appliances that actually worked properly. The bathroom had good water pressure and didn't smell like mildew. Windows that let in natural light, making everything feel open and clean. A building with security, which meant I felt safe. A gym in the basement, which I started using in the mornings before work. A mailroom that actually locked, not like the cluster of boxes at my family's place where mail regularly went missing. The first night I slept there, I remember lying in my new bed, just a mattress on the floor at that point, and listening to the silence. No arguing from my parents' room, no sister talking loudly on the phone at midnight, no footsteps in the hallway, no doors slamming, no constant underlying tension. Just quiet. My quiet. In my space. I cried a little, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of finally being free. I bought furniture slowly, deliberately. A real bed frame from IKEA. Not just a mattress on the floor. A desk for my office space. A small dining table. A comfortable chair for reading. Nothing expensive or fancy. I was still being careful with money, but mine. Earned. Chosen. Every piece felt like a victory. My new job started on a Monday in January, and walking into that office for the first time felt like stepping into a different universe. This wasn't the cramped cubicles of my old marketing firm. This was a corner office on the 15th floor with windows overlooking the city. My grandmother's personal assistant showed me around, introduced me to the team I'd be working with. 8 people, all looking at me with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. The new girl, hired because of family connections. I could see it in their eyes. I'd have to prove myself. The salary hit my account that first month. $29,166. I stared at the number on my phone for a full minute, unable to process it. This was more money than I'd made in 10 months at my old job. In 1 month. The number felt impossible, unreal, like it would disappear if I looked away. But it didn't disappear. It stayed. And the next month, another $25,000 appeared. And the month after that, I started saving aggressively. Half of every paycheck went straight into savings. Even living comfortably, treating myself to decent groceries and the occasional nice dinner, I was still saving more per month than I used to make per month. The math was absurd. The work itself was challenging in ways my old job never was. I wasn't just executing other people's plans anymore. I was creating strategy. My grandmother would call me into her office, an enormous space on the top floor that overlooked half the city, and we'd discuss business problems. Real problems. How to enter a new market. How to handle a competitor's aggressive pricing. How to restructure a division that wasn't performing. She'd explain her thinking, then ask for mine. At first I was terrified to offer opinions, but she insisted. I didn't hire you to nod and agree, she said after my first hesitant suggestion. I hired you because you have fresh eyes and you're not afraid to work. So work. Think. Tell me what you actually believe, not what you think I want to hear. So I did. And sometimes my ideas were terrible, naive or impractical or missing crucial information. She'd explain why, gently but clearly, turning every mistake into a teaching moment. But sometimes my ideas were good. Sometimes I'd see an angle she hadn't considered, an approach that made her pause and think. Those moments felt incredible. I was learning business from the inside at a level most people never get to see. Supply chain negotiations, financial projections, market analysis, personnel management, legal considerations. She was teaching me everything, holding nothing back, treating me like an actual executive instead of just a relative she was indulging. The team I managed started warming to me after the first major project. We were handling a product launch, and I let them do their jobs without micromanaging, but stayed involved enough to catch potential problems before they became disasters. When the launch exceeded projections by 30%, they stopped looking at me like the boss's granddaughter and started looking at me like their actual manager. We went out for drinks after the numbers came in, my first time really socializing with coworkers, and they admitted they'd assumed I'd be useless, just nepotism getting someone a job they couldn't handle. But you actually know what you're doing, one of them said, slightly drunk. You're actually good at this. That validation meant everything. My old family started texting around month 2, then calling, then leaving voicemails when I didn't answer. My mom sent long messages about their mistakes, about how hard things were now, about how they missed me. My dad sent shorter ones about family sticking together through difficulties. My sister sent the most, Paragraphs about being sorry, about not knowing her boyfriend would leave, about needing help, about how I was her only hope. The messages got progressively more desperate. By month 3, they were talking about eviction notices. By month 4, they mentioned selling furniture. I showed them all to my grandmother one evening over dinner at a nice Italian restaurant downtown. She read through each one with no expression, her face neutral. Then she handed my phone back. Block them. They had months to treat you with respect. Years, actually. They chose manipulation and exploitation instead. They're only sorry now because there are consequences to their actions, not because they understand what they did wrong. Don't you think that's harsh? I asked, even though I knew the answer. Do I think it's harsh to expect people to face the natural outcomes of their own choices? No. Do I think it's harsh to protect yourself from people who've proven they'll exploit you given any opportunity? Absolutely not. She took a sip of her wine. If you want to forgive them eventually, that's your choice. But forgiveness doesn't require restoration of access. You can forgive someone and still maintain boundaries. Actually, that's usually the healthiest approach. So I blocked them. All of them. It felt wrong at first, like I was being cruel, like I was the bad guy in this story. But then I'd remember those 2 months of taking the bus, while my sister used my car for parties. I'd remember years of being mocked for wanting to work. I'd remember the emotional blackmail, the threats, the manipulation. The guilt faded quickly after that. Before completely closing that chapter, I made sure to properly thank everyone from my old life who'd actually helped me. My boss from the marketing firm wrote me a reference letter that was genuinely glowing. He said I'd been one of his best assistants, and while he was sad to lose me, he was happy I'd found such an incredible opportunity. I sent him a thank you card with a nice bottle of wine, but the person I really wanted to thank was my coworker friend, the woman who'd driven me on rainy days and kept me sane through the worst of it. I took her to lunch on my last day at that office before I started the new job and told her everything that had happened. The car, the theft, the confrontation, the new apartment and job and life. She cried happy tears and told me she'd known I was destined for something bigger than that cramped office and demanding clients. You were always too good for that place, she said. Too driven, too ambitious. I'm just glad someone finally recognized it. We exchanged numbers and promised to stay in touch. And we actually did. We still get coffee once a month, and she's genuinely happy for my success without any jealousy or resentment. Real friendship, it turns out, doesn't depend on equal circumstances. It depends on actually caring about the other person's well-being. I heard about my family's situation through my grandmother's lawyer. They'd contacted him asking for financial help, and he'd politely declined on my grandmother's behalf, and then informed her of the contact. The lawyer reported what he'd learned. They'd been evicted within 2 months of the money stopping, exactly as my grandmother had predicted. They'd sold most of their furniture and electronics to scrape together enough for a cheaper apartment in a worse neighborhood. My dad had found work as a security guard at a mall, ironwork, 10-hour shifts, minimum wage. My mom was working at a supermarket, cashiering and sometimes stocking shelves. My sister had gone through 3 call centers before finding one that would keep her despite her attendance issues. Part of me, a tiny part, way in the back, felt bad for them. They were struggling. Genuinely struggling in ways they'd never had to before. But mostly I felt nothing. They'd had every opportunity to choose differently. Every chance to treat me with respect, to support my ambitions, to be actual family instead of predators wearing family masks. They'd chosen wrong at every turn. This wasn't punishment. This was just reality finally catching up to people who'd been insulated from it for too long. 6 months after everything imploded, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was my mom. "Please don't hang up," she said immediately. I need to say this. We were wrong. About everything. We got so comfortable living off your grandmother's money that we forgot how to function without it. We treated you terribly because you reminded us of what we should have been doing. You were right, and we were wrong, and I'm sorry. I waited for the manipulation, the request for money, the guilt trip. It never came. She just cried quietly and said she understood if I never wanted to speak to her again. She just wanted me to know they'd finally learned the lesson. I thanked her for the apology and told her the truth. I wasn't ready to have them back in my life. Maybe someday, but not now. The wounds were too fresh. She said she understood. Then she hung up. I sat in my apartment afterward, looking out at the city lights, thinking about how far I'd come. A year ago, I was waking up at 5:30 to take a bus to a job that barely paid enough to survive. My family mocked me daily. I had no prospects of anything better. Now I was living in my own apartment, making $300,000 a year. learning business strategy from someone who'd actually built an empire. I had a future that was bright and mine and built on my own merit. And I had my grandmother, who saw in me what no one else bothered to look for. My grandmother and I had dinner together once a week. She was teaching me everything she knew, preparing me for the day when I'd venture out on my own. I was learning eagerly, making notes, asking questions. I was becoming the businesswoman I'd always wanted to be. One year after that Christmas confrontation, I closed my first independent contract, not for my grandmother's company, but for a client I'd found myself. My grandmother attended the final presentation, sitting in the back, saying nothing. When it was over and the client signed, she smiled at me with such pride that I almost cried. "You did that yourself," she said afterward. "No help from me. That's all you." I still drive that car every day. Every time I get in it, I remember that morning when my grandmother handed me the keys. I remember her faith in me when my own family had none. I remember the girl I was then, exhausted, mocked, dreaming of something better, and I'm proud of how far she's come. The car was never really about the car. It was about recognition, respect, reward for genuine effort. It was about someone finally seeing my potential and investing in it. It was about learning that family isn't just biology. It's who shows up for you, who believes in you, who wants you to succeed. My grandmother is my family. My friend from work is my family. Blood relation doesn't mean anything if the relationship is poisonous. I hope my parents and sister learned from this. I hope they found dignity in their work. But whether they have or haven't, that's not my responsibility anymore. I can only live my own life, make my own choices, build my own future. The easy path is a trap. It's comfortable until suddenly it isn't. The hard path, waking up early, working long hours, constantly learning and pushing yourself, that path is harder in the moment, but it builds something real, something that can't be taken away by someone else's decision, something that's truly yours. And that, I've learned, is worth everything.